That's okay, not.
Well,
Alright,
Alright, let's get started. Hello, my name is Ryan Leister. You probably haven't seen me around much because I've become a bit of a recluse. But a little bit about myself, I just finished my bachelor's this fall, so now I'm doing my master's here. I was on the CCDC team the last 2 years, and I retired. Boo, what do you mean? So I was the Inject handler for 2 years, and I've been doing Injects since my first ever mock that we did at DSU, so back in like fall of 2018. So I've been doing Injects for a stupid amount of time, and just here to talk about Injects and what they are and what you should do to be good at them. So I think the first question some of us might have is, what is the big deal with Injects? Why do I care? Or some of you might be wondering, what the heck are they? So Injects are business tasks that make the competition, quote unquote, more realistic. CCDC's aim is to make it seem like you're in a real business's network during an incident. And so, of course, a big component of working in a business is you're going to have to deal with messages from the CEO. You're going to have messages from your higher ups, and they're going to want to know what's going on and give us memos, give us reports, give us presentations, stuff like that. So what you're going to see most often is written reports, written memos. Presentations used to be pretty big, but they've kind of gone away. But I still bring them up because in the event you're doing an in-person event, there is a chance a presentation will happen. So your Inject handler is in charge of Injects. So on your typical 8-person team, you've got your network firewall person, you got your 3 Linux people, your 3 Windows people, and then that last person is your Inject handler. And in a CCDC environment, whether it's nationals, regionals, a mock we have here, whatever, Injects account for 50% of your total score. So what that means is one person is in charge of 50% of your team's score. No pressure. So in case you were curious, okay, what does that look like? This was taken back in 2018, and you can see there's a huge difference between first and second in terms of Inject scores. That's because Team 2 took their Injects really seriously, and the other teams did not, and the scores very much reflect that, and Team 2 ended up doing really well in overall scores. And here's another example. Ooh, what is that doing now? I don't know what's going on. Okay, one way. So service scores for Team 2, 178 points. That's awful. This was also in 2018, by the way. Team 2's Inject handler did really well, almost got 3,000 points. And because of that, Team 2 was able to run off with first place by, almost was it 2,000 point lead almost? So yeah, Injects, you need to take them seriously. So, okay, we know they're important, but what should you anticipate? Some of the most common Injects you'll see, whether it's a mock or regionals and nationals, is a network report. So that's like, tell us everything about your network. Tell us what systems are on there. Tell us their host names. Tell us their IP addresses, both local and maybe like if it's being hit from the internet, what's that IP? They want to know the important services. They want to know what's open, like what open ports you have, basically anything and everything. Network traffic, so that's a firewall specific Inject. So they're going to want to know, what are the top 10 destination IPs? What are the top 10 source IPs? You know, which boxes are getting hit the most from the inside and outside, stuff like that. Audits, so like user audits, password audits, stuff like that. Add users, very common. Policies, so they might ask you to write a report and implement a password policy, stuff like that. Basically, a lot of CSC 321 concepts. So if you've taken that class, it's a lot of risk assessments and incident response plans. So you might have to write some of those. Honeypots are usually only at regionals and nationals, but I think at mocks we've done them a couple times just to kind of prepare you guys to see them. Is it worth it? So in the past, I've seen the CEO come to me and say, hey, what kind of certifications should we get for our employees? And then you have to go do research into the different certifications. Maybe they want to know, is it worth to upgrade to the newest operating system? Is it worth it to install this, install that? And then you have to defend your stance. For all you Linux admins in the room, SSH brute force protection is 100% going to show up. So make sure you know how to fail to ban and stuff like that. And then Meltdown Inspector, which is my Achilles heel for Injects. I don't know why, but every time I get that inject, I cry. I can never do it well. So don't be like me. So you may be sitting there and thinking like, oh, all I have to do is write reports. That's easy because I can pound out a report in an hour. I do that for my classes anyway, so I can do it for Injects. So you're thinking, yeah, it's really easy. But in reality, you're drowning in paperwork. You're up to your ears in stuff to do. It's not fun. So in order to keep you from getting overwhelmed and just to make your Injects all that better, I hereby give you the 7 deadly sins of Inject handling, what not to do. Sin number 1, giving the Inject handler an important box. Now, that may seem obvious, but I've seen other teams do that in the past. Like they gave their Inject handler a DC. I'm glad you're all laughing. Yeah, that team didn't do well in Injects, and their DC was also down half the time as well. So team members, you need to take the important boxes. You need to take the firewalls. You need to take the DCs. You need to take the servers, stuff with scored services. That's your guys' job. I mean, obviously, and those are the fun boxes anyway. Inject handler should only have 1 box at the most, if any, and it should be something easy, like a Windows 10 client box or like an Ubuntu client. And add bonus of if they have that box, they can run scans and stuff like Nessus scans or Nmap scans if they need that for an Inject. So it should be something that they can lock down really quick and not really worry about, or maybe something you could remotely secure for them. Sin number 2, not listening to your Inject handler. Again, really obvious, but I've seen a lot of people do it. Sometimes when we're in the heat of the competition, we get really into what we're doing and we just kind of block out everything that's going on around us. We're only focused on what's on our monitor. But you need to not do that because an Inject's gonna be mentioned and you're not gonna hear it and it's not gonna get done in time. So Inject handlers need to get your team's attention somehow. Whether it's tapping them on the shoulder, raising your voice slightly, make sure your team knows that there is an Inject out there that needs to get done. And team members, if you hear your Inject handler talking, you should probably pay attention to what they're saying. Listen to your Inject handler, especially if you're like the main Linux admin or the main Windows admin or the network firewall person. Like, you should be listening, especially if it's Inject pertaining to your boxes. Sin number 3, not delegating Injects. So white team loves to dump a lot of Injects on blue team. And kind of that whole up to your ears in paperwork thing. And they do that because they're trying to teach you that everyone on the team needs to be helping with Injects. It can't just be one person. We've tried that method in the past. It doesn't work. So everyone needs to be helping. The Inject handler just can't do everything and have it be good. Like, I've had it in the past where I didn't delegate properly and I handed in an Inject that was like 2 sentences long. It was bad. So team members, if the Inject handler gives you an Inject, please do it. Especially if the Inject pertains to your box or if you have prior experience with it. Now, I've already talked about the box, but say you are really familiar with VPNs and an Inject comes through and the CEO wants you to compare and contrast like different VPN services. Like, step in and say, hey, I can help you with that. If maybe you've been doing some research into certifications lately and the CEO comes in and says, hey, I want to know about different certifications, like step in. Or maybe they want, I think we've had, logging. Like, we had an Inject come in at regionals like, hey, implement logging. And Shane was like, well, I'm going to do that anyway, so I'll just set it up now. And I was like, thanks, Shane. So we were great. We had synergy. And Inject handlers, be realistic. with your team and with yourself. Know your limits and know, I can't do this inject, I need to give this to somebody else. Or my team's putting out a dumpster fire, I'm not gonna bother them right now. All right, sin number 4, doing injects at the last minute. You're not gonna score well if you do this. It's not gonna end well. Inject handlers, obviously get your injects done as soon as you can. If you pass them off to a team member, keep checking in with them until they get it done. I usually like to do 5-10 minutes. If it's a later deadline, like say they've got an hour and a half, I usually bother them at like the 30-minute mark and blah, blah, blah. Is it doing that on your guys' screen as well? That's weird. Yeah, check in on them, especially as the deadline approaches, start kind of getting on their butt a little bit more if they're not done. And team members, do your injects as soon as you can, preferably before the deadline, so the inject handler has time to kind of review. All right, sin 5, turning in injects late. So let's say you have an inject that's due in like 5 minutes, and it's not that great. It's maybe like 75% done. Could you, 1, turn it in even though it could be better, or 2, turn it in a couple minutes late? Go with 1 every single time, and here's why. All late injects, no matter what, it doesn't matter if they're a minute late or an hour late, they're going to be worth 50% of your original points. So if the inject's 75% perfect, you're going to get 75% of the points. But if you turn it in late, it now needs to be 100% perfect in order to get just 50% of the points. Does that make sense? All right. So you should always turn it in on time, TLDR. You have a better shot of getting a better score, even if it isn't perfect. All right, so kind of how to prevent it from happening for you being in that situation in the first place. Inject handler, you gotta watch the clock. I watch it religiously when I'm in competition. Turn injects in on time, even early, because if you turn it in early, then that gives you more time to work on other ones. Then you want to prioritize your injects. Finish the injects with the earliest deadlines first, obviously. And you should put more time into injects that say critical or high importance on them, because they're probably going to be worth more points. At the mocks we do here, we don't really worry about the criticalness of them, but at regionals, nationals, they're 100% going to take that into consideration when they're scoring stuff. Because I know I've gotten comments on injects in the past, and they've said, this was a critical inject, you should have put more time in, kind of thing. So team members, if you get assigned an inject, get it done before the deadline. So like maybe like 10-15 minutes earlier. Sometimes when I'm inject handling, I'll even tell the teammates, like say it's due at 5:30, I'll tell them give it to me at 5:15, just so I have that 15 minutes to double check it, make sure the formatting's good, spelling, grammar, stuff like that, make sure they're hitting everything that they're looking for in the assignment. So number 6, not having a template. Injects need to look consistent, professional, and be PDFs. That is always a given. So what I do, and what I've done for a long time now, is make templates ahead of time. So your template at the bare minimum should have the date of the competition, the inject number, so I usually just do like inject number and then I leave it blank until we get into it. Team number, if you know that ahead of time. A fake company logo, that's more bonus points. Sometimes our environments don't give us fake company logos, so don't worry about it if that's the case. If it's a report, it should have headings, a table of contents. If it's a memo, it should have the stuff for memo. Yeah. Everyone, and the important thing is everyone on the team should have access to the template. So if it's in like a Google Drive, make sure everyone has access to Google Drive. If maybe it's just a Word doc, make sure everyone's got a copy of that Word doc. So like put it in your team's Discord, like link it there. If you need to have a physical copy for whatever reason, like maybe nationals, because they don't let you bring in digital stuff, they only let you bring in paper stuff, assuming it's in person, then print out your template and maybe have notes on there of like, this is the margin, and this is the font and the point, and this is all this, and blah, blah, blah. And finally, the last sin, is having bad spelling and grammar. Not only is it just sloppy and unprofessional, and it's going to make you lose points, it's actually slowing you down because you have to spend time, even like 2 minutes going through and right-clicking on all those red squiggly lines or all the blue squiggly lines, and you could be using that time to either make your conclusion better or add a little bit more to it. So if you're not really great with your grammar and spelling, consider brushing up on it. I'm sure there's stuff online that can help you with that. I just have really good spelling and grammar automatically because my brain's weird. My brain's wired to be an English major. So now I wanted to kind of show you guys my injects. So it'll work. There we go. I can probably zoom in a little bit. Yeah, you can read that. So these were the injects from, I think, regionals. So this is kind of what you're going to see. They're going to be in kind of an email format. So you have from the CEO or the security chief, they come up with different names. And it's addressed to you, the IT staff, and then the subject, and they'll just tell you what they want and when to get it done by. So this competition we had, I think, like 24 injects over the course of 16 hours. So when you do injects for a long time, you tend to notice repeats. So if you do it really often, you will start to notice the trends and kind of be prepared for what you're going to see. See, there's lockdown SSH. So that's pretty much kind of what you're going to see. For our mocks, we made it more digital, so now you have like an Inject portal you go to, which is in line with how Regionals does it. There's an Inject portal you're supposed to check, stuff like that. So this is, I'll show you my templates. How's this gonna look? So, zoom a little bit. Yeah. So this is what my memo template looks like. So as you can see, I have team number, and then I just put a little hashtag or pound sign for where I'm going to put the number when I know what our team number is. Same thing with Inject, and make sure you update the Inject number as you go along. Make sure it's consistent with the Inject you're turning in. Date, that's where the date goes. So it's in this little gray box is where I'll put the name of the fake company that we're doing the competition for. So here I would put like, I think, or gaming or whatever. And make sure the spelling and the capitalization is consistent with how it's done in the doc. Then yeah, it's basically a memo is supposed to look like an email reply. So like you're replying to the Inject. So to the person the Inject came from us, from the team number, the date, name of the Inject. So if it's like SSH lockdown, you would put regarding SSH lockdown. And then to, same person as in the to line. We have done what you asked. Here is evidence. Thanks. And then sign off with your team number. So memos are usually like short and sweet, like, hey, we want you to add these users. This is where you would use a memo. So a memo, it would just be like, hey, we added the users. Here are their usernames and passwords. They're on these boxes, and they have these privileges, like if they're administrator or just a local user or whatever. Sometimes they want screenshots. So if they want like a screenshot of like a login banner, you would put that in there, and then format it so it looks pretty, and then sign off, save it as a PDF, clip it and ship it off to the Inject portal. So the other thing is a report. So reports are typically longer. So memos usually like a page, maybe a page and a half if you have like pictures. So with a report, same thing. team number, inject number, the date, it's all the same. The company name, your team number. In this huge middle empty space is where you would put the logo, if you have one. So here I don't have my table of contents in this report or in this template, but I would recommend a table of contents. And here you would just, title of report, how you would label, you got your headings, paragraphs of information like password audits, what's a report? The following is a password policy for Warp Core Gaming, and this is what we've found, and you go into it and just talk about complexity standards and maybe how long a password, they have to change their password every 90 days. Maybe that could be a different heading. Conclusion. All in all, it's a good thing that Warp Core Gaming is going to do a password policy because they are more secure and keep us safe. Okay, thanks, bye. So that's reports. They typically take longer. They're going to have a longer deadline to them. So take your time, research, and do your best. I do have intrusion report templates. I don't even know how this looks. Yeah. So this is how I structured them when I thought I was going to have to take printed copies in, where I just say 24-point font, Times New Roman, yada yada yada. Sometimes, at regionals and nationals, they will ask you if, in the event you are hacked by red team, you can get, I think, up to 50% of your points back by submitting an intrusion report. And basically, first off, they're next to impossible to do because Dwayne is a huge stickler. But the gist is you want to tell them the attacker information, how they got in, how it happened, what systems were affected. Dwayne gives a whole list of everything he wants. I don't think we do them at mocks here. We used to, but not really because we've just found we don't really have the time. Like, you guys don't have the time. Inject handlers definitely don't have the time. And it's just kind of not worth it. But if you want to make Dwayne happy, you can try it. So I've just had this handy for a couple years now. The other thing I can show you is kind of how a final report or final inject looks once it's done. So another thing to keep in mind is sometimes they will be sticklers about how your file name is named. I kid you not. So if you see the name of this file, it's team1 _ inject _ 22, and it's with .pdf. Some people are that huge a stickler. So keep that in mind as well if you are doing injects, that they have to be named very specifically sometimes. I don't think we're a huge stickler at our mocks, but regionals and nationals they are. So as you can see, here's our header. So team name, inject name, and then the date of the competition. And then we actually had a logo. So we just made this logo, we just copied it from the team doc and then made it really big. So it took up the whole front page. Table of contents. I think Annabelle did this inject. I may be wrong. Is this one?
Shane did this one.
Did I do this one? I don't know. I don't remember. So this one was a DDoS report. So we talked about what we were doing. We've got have little footnotes. And then here we just have another heading. We have even screenshots, and we have those named as well. Because Dwayne loves his formatting. And then I think everything should be Times New Roman 12-point font. Yep, double spaced. Just consistent formatting, because you can even see there's the white spaces are consistent between paragraphs. Yeah, that's how crazy I am. And then it ends, and then we even have page numbers. So this is a really good inject. Well, actually I don't know how well this one got scored, but to me it looks really good. And if I was grading injects and this came across my desk, I would be really happy with it. So yeah, I don't have a good memo example, but Memos are pretty easy. Yeah, that's pretty much all I have. I probably talked too fast. Does anyone need me to go back over anything, or does anyone have any questions? Even if you just something like, what's the worst inject you've ever turned in? I will tell you.
What's the worst inject you've ever turned in?
It was a Meltdown Spectre inject that I got, I don't remember when it was, but yeah, it was like, I just was really stressed and overwhelmed with injects, and I didn't have time for it, so I sent in 2 sentences. It was all formatted pretty, but it was just 2 sentences long, and then white team actually came up to me after the competition and said, "Who turned in that Meltdown Spectre inject? That was awful," and I went and cried in the bathroom. I wish I was kidding about that. Yeah. I mean, I'm sure I've turned in lots of other bad injects as well, especially when I was learning, but that one sticks out as probably my worst. Or any other questions?
Are all of these injects done in APA formatting?
So the question for the stream is, what is the preferred format for injects? It doesn't really matter. I use APA just because that's what I'm familiar with. You could definitely use MLA, you could use IEEE, you could use whatever you want. I mean, you could come up with your own format if you want, honestly. The key is consistent across all the injects. So, and this can be kind of hard when there's multiple people doing injects. You know, I've had it in the past where I have a very specific format, and then someone sends me in an inject that they've done for our team, and it's just a completely different format, so I have to spend all that time fixing the formatting, because that is something they will dock you on, is if all of a sudden inject 1 is an APA, and inject 3 is an IEEE, and so white team will dock you on that. So just use your favorite format, and then make sure as a team you all agree that that's the format we're using, and we're gonna stick with that the whole competition.
We looked it up and we got full points for that one. So.
What?
We got full points for that one.
We did? Ah, yay, we did get full points. Yeah, I mean, I would give us full points. This was a good inject. Any other questions about injects? This is the first time we've really gone in depth. So ask away, seriously.
What priority would you give injects over like a dumpster fire that's going on with your systems?
That's a good question.
Or like at what level does injects take priority over what you're working on as a administrator of a system?
So yeah, so the question is, what's more important, injects or putting out fires in your network? And it really comes down to communication between you and the team. So, because there's definitely been times when I've gone to a team member and said, hey, I have an inject for you, we need to get this done, and they'll say, my box is like trashed right now, I'll get back to you. Because if the box is trashed, they can't do the inject for you, you know? Like if the Palo's down, they can't give you, you know, your top 10 IPs that have hit the network. So obviously at that point, the box 100% comes first. You also have to kind of weigh the consequences of, okay, this box is completely gone. Do we take the loss and revert and take the point loss so we can get the inject done and maybe kind of balance it out in a way? Or do we just kind of let the box go and let it go the way of like the dinosaurs and ignore it for the rest of the competition and then just lose the inject points? It really just depends. Like if it's the DC, by God, get the DC back up. If it's the Palo or your PF Sense, get it back up. Injects, be damned. But you know, I would say fixing your box comes first. Injects, probably second priority. But if it's something simple like, oh, I'm just doing logging and oh, it doesn't really matter or doesn't affect our score, then go do the inject. If you're just kind of doing random stuff like that. Oh, and if your box is really close to doing an SLA violation, get your box up first before injects for sure. That's the other thing to keep in mind. So it's all a balancing act, and communication between the teams is very important to determine what needs to get done now. Any other questions? If you do have any questions, oh, actually, I think I have one last slide, now that I think about it. In conclusion, injects are very important, so please do them. Makes me sad as a white, because I've white teamed once, and it was sad to not have injects to grade. I got really bored. Respect your inject handler. Their job is very difficult, and please be kind to them. Even if they're nagging you, please know they nag with care. And remember, the reason we have injects is to teach you how to talk and properly write and communicate both orally and written language with higher ups, and that's definitely going to help you in your future career because you're going to do that. And if you have questions about injects, tips and tricks of the trade, I'm in the Help Night Discord, I'm in the Security Discord, or Security Club Discord. I'm also on Slack. I think everything's just @Ray. I would love to help you guys out and, keep DSU's injects going strong, because we've been doing really well the past few years, and I want to keep that going.